Good morning, everyone. So what we're going to do today is exactly what we were going to do in class, which is review factoring. This is the exact worksheet we were going to go through. Make sure you watch this video because I'm not going to really go through factoring too much in class because this is what I would be doing anyway. So to start off, what we are going to do is factor binomial, which means it has two terms. So when you factor a binomial, what you're going to do is see what these two have in common. So 49x and 7, both 7 goes into both of them. So to figure out what you have left inside the parentheses, whatever you factor out, you divide each term by. So 49 over 7 is 7x plus 1. And you can always check yourself by distributing in to see if you get back to the original, which you will, okay? So from here, we could do the same thing with 121x minus 11x squared. So 11 goes into both of these. We want the greatest common factor. And then we have x and x squared. We can take out an x. And to figure out what you're left with, you can divide by whatever you factor out. So 121 over 11 is 11. X over x goes away. 11 over, we have the minus. 11 over 11 goes away. X squared over x just becomes x. And we can distribute the 11x back in to get our answer. And then for this one, we're going to say what's the biggest number that goes into both 16 and 24, and that's 8. And then x cubed and x to the fifth, we can plot an x cubed. So to figure out what's left, we can divide both terms by whatever we factor out. 16 over 8 is 2. 24 over 8 is 3. And then x to the fifth over x cubed. When you have exponents and you are dividing two terms with x and an exponent, you subtract the exponent. So this would be x squared. So we have 2x squared. And then x cubed over x cubed, just they cancel, so you just have plus 3. And there's nothing else you can do with that. So when you have a binomial, so two terms, that's what you're going to do, okay? Number 2. So we call this a trinomial because it has three terms, an x squared, an x, and a number term. So this is kind of basically in standard form like we've been talking about with our graphs. So when the number in front is just 1, all you have to do is say what adds to the middle number, what multiplies to the first times the last, okay? It's always what adds to the middle, like the b value, multiplies to the first times the last. In this case, 1 times 7 is just 7. Okay, the two numbers that multiply to 7 but adds 8 are 7 and 1. So we're going to get x plus 7 times x plus 1. Okay, and you'll see the other ones are the same thing. So since the number in front is just 1, it's add to the middle. So add to negative 13 and multiply to 40. Those two numbers that multiply to 40 and add to 13 are 8 and 5. But since we want to add to a negative and multiply to a positive, both have to be negative. Since the number in front is just 1, you can just jump and put them into your factor pairs. Okay, so if you do the same thing for x squared plus 11x plus 18, adds to 11, multiplies to the first 1 times 18, so be 18. Those two numbers are 9 and 2, so x plus 2, x plus 9. And it doesn't matter if you do x plus 9 times x plus 2 or x plus 2 times x plus 9. It does not matter. And then if you do the same thing for d, you will end up getting x plus 6, x minus 4. And you can always check yourself by foiling it back out, see if you get the original. Okay? When we get to E and F, this is where, making sure I'm still recording, this is where you're going to see first, before you do anything else, every time you start these problems, look at it and say, is there anything I can factor out? So even for this one, like look at it, x squared plus 2x minus 24, is there anything I can factor out? There's nothing. The number in front is 1, there's no x's I can factor out. But here in this one, I can pull out a 2. I'll be left with x squared plus 3x minus 54. Since I can factor out a 2, you just leave the 2 out in front, and whatever's on the inside, you're going to factor it like the ones before it, like a through d. So what adds to 3 and multiplies to 1 times negative 54, so multiplies to negative 54. When you factor it, whatever you pull out in front just stays out in front, The two numbers you're going to get are 9 and 6. The 9 being positive, 6 being negative. So we'll get x plus 9, x minus 6. And f is basically along the same lines. You can factor out a 5 here. And then you can factor the inside, x minus 4, x minus 2. But you need to put the 5 out in front because it changes the equation, okay? There are some times, so there's something I want to go over that's not on the front. We'll go over the back. You do not worry about 3a, b, and c. Those are what we call difference of cubes or sum of cubes, and we're not really going to go through them. Okay, so what I want to talk about before we do anything else is I'm actually going to I'm going to go to the back, and on the back, you can cross out 6 and 7, but I want to look at 8 together. Okay, so for 8, you'll notice it's 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. So there's a number in front, it's 3 terms, so we would like to say what adds to the middle multiplies to the first times the last, but see if you can factor anything out, and you can't. So we really do need to factor it by saying, okay, what adds to the middle? Anytime it's 3 terms, see if you can factor anything out. If you can't, you say what adds to the middle multiplies to the first times the last. So in this case, rather than just saying, oh, it's going to multiply to 4, because that won't work, you have to do multiply to the first times the last. So multiplies to 12. The two numbers that do this are multiply to 12, 6 and 2, add to negative 8, so negative 6 and negative 2. You cannot do this. That will not get you the correct answer, because if you FOIL this out, you're not going to get a 3x squared in front. So when you have a number, I'll erase this, when you have a number in front of the x squared that cannot be factored out, we have to do it by grouping. So what we do is, whatever two numbers we get here, we put an x next to them. We replace negative 8x with those two numbers. So if this were negative 5x, we would replace it with those two numbers. When you do that, now you split it in half and factor it by grouping, which means we're going to split it in half, factor these two, just like we did the first examples, factor these two, just like the first examples. So 3x squared minus 6x, we can factor out a 3x, we're left with x minus 2. We can factor out a negative 2, we're left with x minus 2. If you did it correctly, the parentheses should be the same. Your final answer is whatever is in front becomes one factor pair, whatever is in the parentheses becomes the other. This is my final answer. If I FOIL it out, I'm going to get the original. You cannot just say, oh, my two numbers are negative 6 and negative 2, so my answer is going to be 6x minus 6x minus 2. That will not work here. You have to, whatever you get for the two numbers, put an x next to them, and replace the negative 8x with them, split it and factor by grouping. I'm going to do one more for you. So this one on this topic. So you're going to say what adds. So first off, can you factor anything out? No. So what adds to the middle number? So what adds to 3 and multiplies to 2 times negative 9, which is negative 18. So what adds to 3 multiplies to the first times the last. You can't just do multiplies to negative 9. It has to be like the TP. 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. These two numbers are 6 and 3. To add to a positive, the 6 has to be positive, the 3 has to be negative. You cannot just do this, okay, because it won't FOIL out to the 2x squared. Again, what you do is, whatever these two numbers are, you put x's next to them. You're going to replace the plus 3x with plus 6x minus 3x minus 9. So you're replacing the 3x with the plus 6x minus 3x. You're going to now split it and factor by grouping. 2x. If I pull out a 2x from here, I'll be left with x plus 3. Here, I can pull out a negative 3, and I'll be left with x plus 3. If you do it correctly, the parentheses should be the same. So our factor pairs at the end up being 2x minus 3. And then you take one of the parentheses, x plus 3. And this will FOIL out to the original. Okay, and both 11 and 12 are good examples. So again, for 11, and then you can do 12 on your own, but 11, we want to add to 5 and multiply to the first times the last, 2 times 2, which is 4. Those two numbers are 4 and 1. So then we rewrite the problem. We put an x next to those numbers, and we're going to replace the plus 5x with 4x plus 1x plus 2. We're going to split it and factor by grouping. So 2x, x plus 2. And then here, we already have x plus 2, so technically you pull out a plus 1, and you're left with x plus 2. Okay, so if you already have kind of what you need, just pull out a plus 1. So my two factor pairs are going to be 2x plus 1 times x plus 2. Okay, and I'll post the key to this worksheet with it, as well as the key to the review sheet. So the last thing I want to talk about is, and of course there are a few more problems on here before we get to factoring by grouping, is difference of squares. So difference of squares isn't particularly on here, but all difference of squares says that if you have a squared minus b squared, so subtraction in between two perfect squares, it breaks up an a plus b, a minus b. So you guys have seen this before with x squared minus 16, right? Becomes, these are both perfect squares. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 16 is 4. So you get x plus 4, x minus 4, okay? Another common one is like x squared minus 9. So that's x plus 3, x minus 3. But we can also see difference of squares. Maybe there's a 4 in front. Okay, the square root of 4 is 2. So rather than just having x, you'll have a 2x plus 3, 2x minus 3. Okay, maybe in front it's a 9, 9x squared minus 16. So again, you take the square root of this, you get 3x. Square root of 16 is 4. So you'll get 3x plus 4, 3x minus 4. And that's all difference of squares is. So looking back, what I want to do is I want to go down to the factoring by grouping. So when you have 4 terms, this is kind of like where we left off in these problems. You create 4 terms, split it, factor by grouping. Anytime you have 4 terms, you're automatically going to split it and factor by grouping. So I'm going to factor these two. What can I pull out? I can pull out a 4x squared. Left with x minus 4. Here, what can I pull out? Negative 9. I'm left with x minus 4. So now one of your factor pairs is x minus 4. The other one, you take what's in front, 4x squared minus 9. Now, every time you do, especially degree 3, ask yourself, can this be factored anymore? X minus 4 cannot. But think about what we just talked about with difference of squares. A plus b, a minus b. So the square root of 4x squared is 2x. Square root of 9 is 3. So we get 2x plus 3, 2x minus 3. If you leave it here, say it's on your test, right? You leave it here, you're not going to lose all of your credit. You would just lose a little bit, okay? Because it can be factored a little bit further. Not every factor by grouping problem can be factored further. So for example, last one we're going to talk about is this one right here. Split it and factor by grouping. So we can pull out an x squared, left with x minus 12. Pull out a 3, left with x minus 12. So we're left with x squared plus 3 times x minus 12. Because it's x squared and then a plus sign, there is no sum of cubes. You just leave it the way. There is no sum of squares. You just leave it like this. There's nothing else you can do there. Okay? So what I'm going to do, that is a review of factoring that we were going to do in class. Exactly what I was planning on doing. So you can finish up this worksheet. I'm going to post the key to it, but I'm not giving you homework. And if you want more factoring practice, there are a whole bunch of problems on your review sheet on your quest review that you can go over, okay, that you can review for yourself. So make sure you look over, watch this factoring video. If you get some of the factoring, not others, fast forward through it, but make sure you know how to factor for your test. You can also find more videos online, but this is the gist of it. This is exactly what we're going to do in class today. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you, next class.